Why does everyone hate Toronto?
Because all the cool people live here.
Because they wish they lived here.
You're moving out of Toronto.
I'm moving out of Toronto, yeah.
Traffic. It's not the friendliest city in the world.
I think we're not as nice as we think we are.
I would love to be able to live somewhere instead of renting.
Oh, my mom hates Toronto so much. Let's just say it's no Winnipeg.
Wow, I feel like that last comment was directed straight at me. So if you can't tell already by the intro, there's a lot of mixed reaction with the city of Toronto. Either people really love the city or they absolutely hate it. If you're new to this channel, my name is Frank. I spent the last 7 years living in Toronto. I moved there straight out of high school, attended university, and had some time to work there for the last 3 years. And in disclaimer, this video isn't to bash Toronto. It's rather to give you kind of a perspective of what to expect when you move there in the first place. Over the years, I found less and less reasons to want to stay there. For any folks that's out there that's looking to move potentially to Toronto, I want to give the perspective of an individual that came from a smaller town that moved to Toronto in hopes for it to basically shake things up. And to be fair, I don't think I would be who I am today if it wasn't for that city. So in this video, I'm gonna be sharing 6 reasons you shouldn't move to Toronto, and we'll go from there. So without further ado, let's head over to number 1. Okay, we're gonna start off with the most obvious one, but also the most important one, and that is the commuting. The average commute time in Toronto is typically 90 minutes. And I found an article by CityNews that ranked the 6th city as also the 6th worst commute city in the world. Of the world, not North America, the world. Quite frankly, I'm starting to see how it very well is like that. And based on my experience living there, when I talk to folks, typically they'll tell me that their commute time is about 1.5 hours one way. And if you really break it down, if it's 1.5 hours one way and another 1.5 hours back, that's 3 hours. And if you just break it down logistically, if you have 24 hours in a day, you're spending 8 hours sleeping, another 8 at work, you only have 8 hours to yourself. And if you're spending 3 out of those 8 for commuting, it puts a strain on the other items that you have going in your life, because quite frankly, we're busy enough. We have so much things going in our life besides work, sleep. And when you have limited time strain, it puts a toll on your mental health, your body. And according to CityNews, they're not even traveling that far. Folks are traveling about an average distance of 10 kilometers. So a lot of times they're just spending 15 minutes just waiting outside for the bus, for that train, for that subway. It's good in the sense of if you don't have a vehicle, you can still very well make your way around the city. Regardless, whether you're taking the vehicle, the subway, you're gonna spend at least a minimal an hour traveling. And if you think about it, an hour of where I am right now, an hour gets me to the mountains, okay? An hour over there gets me 10 kilometers away in downtown Toronto. It's pretty hectic. You start seeing infrastructure being built, but it's not to the time but that they actually make it and implement it. It's gonna be down the road at least 5-10 years. That's something, quite frankly, I just cannot wait. So that's my perspective with commute. So if you didn't think commuting was bad, let me tell you a little bit about the cost of living, or rather the housing/rental prices, because those are the big items that people really care for. The average home price in Toronto is just over $1 million. It's crazy because there's a game show right now called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? So if you really think about it, everyone in Toronto, you're winning the game show because the housing market is crazy. And renting isn't that much better itself. You're looking at about $2,000 to $2,500 for a 1-bedroom apartment. Yes, I know there's a global pandemic happening right now that's lowering prices with rent. There's actually an article right now by Narcity, and this has a lot of folks in Toronto buzzing because when it came out, a lot of people were shocked but started to recognize it's not as far-fetched as they make it out to be. So the article by Narcity, you now have to make $135K a year to be considered middle class in Toronto. $135,000, it's crazy, but again, I'm starting to see how very well it's possible. Victor Fong of Fong Partners told Narcity, with all these combined costs, the average single person with no children will need to make an annual gross income of $135,000 to be considered middle class in Toronto. Yeah, that's not something I want to do. So that's number 2. The housing prices are horrific. horrific. But here, let's head on to the next one. Over the 7 years, the one thing I noticed about the city is that it's fairly competitive. I figured that it's something to do with just the sheer number of population, the number of people that exist there, and the limited spacing that the city has. And what this does is creates this competitiveness. Because look, if there's any sort of truth to that article, with that Narcity article, that you have to make $135,000 annually to make middle class, well, I'll tell you, when you're graduating straight out of school, you're not gonna make 135 straight off the bat. It's gonna take some years before you can get there. But with that, it creates sort of like that ladder where you're gonna have to, I wouldn't say you're stepping over one another, but it creates that competitiveness that you're gonna be competing with your colleagues to get this promotion, this job, something that you want, and you start recognizing you're working all these hours just to make middle class. And quite frankly, you start recognizing down the road that your most valuable thing in life is your time. Look, you can make more money, but you cannot make more time. So it creates this competitiveness in the city that you really gotta ask yourself if you want to be a part of. And that's something that I learned that I didn't need this. Like life was tough enough. I didn't need more stress. That was part of my life. And so I figured I'd thrive living outside of it. So I often hear that it's tough to build relations in Toronto, whether that is through making friends, your colleagues, or even being in a relationship altogether. It can be a little challenging, and I think it's because the city prides itself on being very career driven. People are just more focused on their jobs, and they have a lot more things to do outside of it. I'll give you an example with even just my friend group. If we're looking to hang out for a dinner of some sort, you typically have to plan it out almost 1 to 2 weeks out in advance just because of everyone's schedule. It's even more challenging just given the commute time. So if I'm looking to meet up with my friends, it almost creates that notion for every person that is it worth my time going and wasting an hour to an hour and a half commuting in the first place. And personally, even with relationships altogether, I noticed that my friend groups in Toronto, there's only maybe 1 or 2 that are in a long-term relationship versus in my hometown in Winnipeg, that's a smaller population, almost every single person there is in a long-term relationship. You're almost treated like a variable in that city, in the sense that people, it's funny because people care so much about how they look in that city, but also at the same time, you're treated like a variable. I'll give you a fine example of this. So if you're walking in the more popular street of Yonge Street, typically, obviously not COVID time, when you're walking down the street, it's almost just head down, do your own thing, walk to your work or school. But also at the same time, it's almost socially unacceptable to be wearing sweatpants on the street. Everyone there is dressed nicely. Like, I get it, it looks nice when people are dressed properly every single day, but it gets old when you're having to do it 365 days in a year, and maybe that's right down your alley. I think for the most part, it gets old. So my final point is one of the more important ones, and don't move to Toronto just because you saw it on TV, Instagram of all the nice buildings, Drake, the Raptors, because realistically, those just aren't realistic. Your reality is that you're still gonna have to work, you have your same household responsibilities, laundry, you're gonna have to make bed. So you really gotta understand what you're getting yourself into when moving into that city, and not be starstruck with all the stuff that you see on social media, because again, it's just not real. People call this city a young city, and I'm starting to recognize why, because when people grow older, they start recognizing these sort of things are very superficial and it's not very long term. This is not to say to never ever move to Toronto. In fact, if it's something that you want to try, by all means, I'm all for trying, seeing how it is, but just recognize some of these things that I wish someone had told me when I first moved. So there you have it. Those are 6 reasons why you shouldn't move to Toronto. And as a friendly reminder, I do not hate the city. In fact, some of my closest friends are still living there that I'm likely going to be visiting after COVID is done with. The city is so great in the multiculturalism, the food. And I wanted to break this up because I know that there's going to be at least one person watching my video who's going to comment or say something along the lines of,
"Hey Frank, you just moved out of Toronto because you couldn't hack it. You didn't have the hustle, the drive, and you just hate Drake."
The internet. Well, since there's nothing else, I'll probably run off now. If you made it to the end of this video, I'd appreciate if you can like this video or subscribe to my channel. I wish everyone back at home a happy holidays, and I will see you in my next video. Peace!